Welcome to DOCNYC. My name is Tom Powers. I'm the artistic director of the festival. Let me say some important thank yous. Thank you to our presenting sponsors, History Films, A&E Indie Films, and New York Magazine. To our major sponsors, Technicolor Postworks New York, Sundance Now, City, and the School of Visual Arts. And to our fantastic DOCNYC staff and volunteers.
Hi, my name is Tom Bean, and I'm here at DOCNYC with my documentary PLIMPTON, starring George Plimpton as himself.
I had a chance to see a rough cut of this film maybe a year or more ago, and knew right away that this was a film that we wanted to be showing at DOCNYC. It so embodies everything that this festival stands for. Not only is it an interesting documentary, it's rooted in New York City, and its very subject is a great master of the nonfiction form. When we started this festival 3 years ago, we felt documentary film was the core, but we were always interested to engage in conversations and dialogues with other documentary forms, radio and photography and writing, and so this is a great way to celebrate that. Please welcome Luke Poling and Tom Bean.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you to everyone at DOCNYC. Thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to the SVA Theater. And thank you all so much for coming out. I mean, a week and a half ago, we weren't sure how many people were going to be able to make it. And it's so nice to look out and see so many friendly faces. It feels like a homecoming. First of all, to show the film tonight in New York City, but also so many of the people that contributed to the movie are here in the audience. You know, our editors, our associate producers, our producers, our executive producers, so many of the people that appear in the film. It's just such a wonderful opportunity to look out and see, you know, so many people that worked on this with us for so long and to share it with you, the final product. So thank you all so much, and let Luke.
Everything Tom said. Enjoy the movie.
Here it is, George Plimpton, starring George Plimpton as himself. Oh,
Thank you all for coming out again, and after this we're all going down to Half King between 10th and 11th on West 23rd, and we'd love for you all to join us there. And Tom.
And also, so as you saw in the film, the Paris Review was such an important part of George's life and legacy, and we're joined by so many folks from the Paris Review tonight who I'd like to acknowledge. But also on the back of George Plimpton's business card was a subscription to the Paris Review, and so in the spirit of that, we had brought someone from the Paris Review who's right outside who's selling issues of the new issue of the Paris Review. It's a fantastic issue, and I would recommend that you all either purchase it or subscribe to the magazine as well.
You buried the lead. It's $5 off. It's $10.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, George Plimpton had such a multi-varied life. There could be so many places you could go with this. You could make it a 6-part series. Talk about the process of, you know, finding your throughway through the story.
Well, I guess first of all, you're right. I mean, this was a major feat of editing. Actually, both of the editors that we worked with on the film are both here tonight, and I'd like to acknowledge that Casey Brooks and Ryan Hall. You guys are beautiful. And I think it's no secret in the documentary film, particularly an archival heavy one, the editors have as much input creatively as the directors, and so we acknowledge and honor both of them. They were absolutely phenomenal to work with. I guess the three things that we primarily focused on, as you saw in the film, were about George was that he was, an editor who launched a career as a countless writers. He was a writer himself who reveled in the fine line between performance and failure. Sorry about that. And he was an artist whose life was his greatest work of art. And so we decided to focus on those three things. We found often that they were quite parallel, particularly his writing and the Paris Review, but then it became those moments of intersection and conflict between the two that we found particularly intriguing and that we decided to kind of, explore further in the interviews. One thing we decided to do right from the get-go, though, was to have George tell his own life story. We thought we would present George and have George tell his story, which he did so articulately and wonderfully, and just stay out of his way. And so that was our primary focus. We didn't want to do any interviews, but we got into it. We realized that we would probably have to do that to pull up some gaps in George's own story, on his story.
We can take some questions from the audience. Raise your hand. I'll call on you. Don't be shy. Yes, in the back.
Was it difficult to get the RFK deposition?
Yeah, the question was about the RFK deposition.
Actually, no. We contacted them because the one photo that very clearly is George and Sirhan was taken that night by a firefighter for LA. So since he's a government employee, it's in the public domain, but you have to get a form filled out that says, yes, we're taking this photo. And when I was on the phone with them, I said, well, what else do you have? And they sent us a 40-some page document of every item entered into evidence at the trial. And George's deposition was way down the bottom, and we said, well, let's just hear this to see what it is. It was on reel-to-reel still. I don't think they had transferred it before. I don't know if anybody else had thought to look for it. And when we put it on, we instantly kind of knew we had found something kind of neat that either no one had heard or no one had heard in a very long time, and certainly not publicly. So it was surprisingly easy that was one of the easier pieces to find, actually.
Who's got a question? Yes, Richard.
Luke, I saw you at Silver Docs, and you mentioned something you found at the bottom of a box, which I thought was a great story, that it was completely unexpected. Could you tell us about that?
Tell us the story of finding something at the bottom of a box.
Yes, we George's widow Sarah gave us access to all of his archives, and we filled up my car, I think 3 or 4 times over in getting all the audio and videotapes and 8mm and 16mm, and we were transferring it all to DVD and CD, and probably a month and a half or so, you think? Into the process. It was about 5 in the afternoon. We were kind of wrapping up for the day, and there was one tape in the bottom of the box that we popped in. I don't think the tape was even labeled, and it turned out to be the footage of RFK kind of mocking George at the rally, which ended up being the night before he was shot. We have no idea who had that, where this came from, but it kind of just fell into our lap, and we were very, very fortunate to have it. We had a couple things like that were just sheer luck that something dropped into our laps, and we were able to hopefully use it correctly.
I have to mention that the DVD extras for this film are going to be very rich. I wonder if there's, one or two that stand out to you as favorites of things that couldn't fit in the structure of the film, but were great moments that you got on film.
Thanks, that's a really interesting question. So we, first of all, we interviewed about 60 people, about 30 of them made the final cut, and that includes people like Albert Maysles, and just fantastically interesting people. So we have just copious amounts of really fun interview material that we didn't use, which would be fun. But one story that I found particularly funny, can you guys hear me? All right. So, is this mythical picture that George created on April Fool's Day for Sports Illustrated. It's a cover story. It was about a pitcher who learned how to pitch a 168-mile-an-hour fastball when his plane crashed in Tibet as a young boy. He was pelting snow leopards with rocks and doing Zen meditation, and he could pitch 160 miles an hour. The Mets might have, drafted him. It was this big scandal, and it lasted for weeks because this was before the internet, so no one could immediately debunk everything. And he was getting calls from congressmen and every news anchor, and they wanted Sid Finch to be on the on their talk shows. And it went on for weeks and weeks. It was totally hilarious. And so that was one of those wonderful Plimptonian moments that we would have loved to have included, but just setting it up, it takes so much context, and so we're hopefully that's one that we will edit, I think, into an extra.
Who's got a question? Yes, right up there.
Where did the original idea to do George Plimpton come from?
Question was, where did the original idea to do Plimpton come from?
Yeah, it's I was just a fan of his work, and when Tom and I were kicking around ideas, I called him one afternoon and kind of was staring at, just noticed my copy of Open Net on the shelf, and said to Tom, like, why not Plimpton? And we were both sort of like, yeah, seems like a good idea, and kind of, how come no one has made this movie already? We wrote Sarah Plimpton a letter saying, here's what we'd like to do. Called her and ended up sitting down with her maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that, and she basically said, yeah, go ahead, start it. So it's Tom and I, and we kind of drove. We were based out of Boston, that's where I live still. Drove down here, did a bunch of interviews. We went out to Detroit, went out to LA, and we were kind of off to the races as soon as she gave us the green light. So it was just really liked his work, and was really interested in this story, and it's something that Tom and I both kind of love the Paris Review. So when it hit us, it was one of those, how come we hadn't thought of this before?